Hey folks, welcome to Fyreflye's Follies. I hope that you enjoy the video today. If you do, don't forget to give me a big thumbs up. It really does help my channel out a lot. And if you haven't subscribed, I hope that you will and stick around for a while. So today I am making tortilla soup. Now typically it is chicken tortilla soup, but we're using up Thanksgiving leftovers. And I am making turkey tortilla soup. I'm gonna leave the full recipe below the way it's written. I am not buying cans. I've pulled some things out of my pantry, and then when I canned turkey I had one jar that didn't seal, so I stuck it in the fridge and thought I'd use it in the soup today. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Now the recipe calls for a medium onion diced, but I have canned onion, so I'm gonna start with that. And because it doesn't have to saute, I can go ahead and add some other things to it. But I am going to let it heat up. And while that's heating, I'm going to start measuring out the spices that I'm going to use. Alright, I'm going to use a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne. Because I want a little kick, but I don't like really spicy. To that, I'm going to add a teaspoon of smoked paprika. Now, regular paprika will work. I personally prefer the smoked, but regular will absolutely work. Then I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of cumin. And a tablespoon of chili powder. But my tablespoon won't fit in my spice jar, so 3 teaspoons. Now, the recipe calls for cilantro. Cilantro is one of those things that there doesn't seem to be any middle ground. You either love it or you hate it. I love it. So I will be adding some freeze-dried cilantro to mine. If you or your family does not like cilantro, you can use oregano or parsley to give it that herb flavor, and leave the cilantro out. And because I'm using dried cilantro, it calls for a 1/4 cup of fresh. I am going to use 2 teaspoons of dried. And these are heaping teaspoons because it's flaked. Alright, so I got my spices all ready and my onions are getting, yeah, they're starting to warm up in there. Now, you can make this with rotisserie chicken. It's really good with rotisserie chicken. You can cook chicken or turkey and make it straight from that. I am using leftover Thanksgiving turkey. Alright, now that my onions are starting to get hot, I'm going to go ahead and add my garlic. It calls for 4 medium minced cloves. If you guys have been on my channel very long, you know I love me some garlic. So I'm going to put 3 healthy tablespoons of garlic in here. And let it go for just a minute so that it kind of blooms. Just until it starts to get fragrant. And now I'm going to add my spices. Now y'all, there is a recipe for this, and I will include the exact recipe in the description below. I tweak and play with my recipes quite a bit, so I don't always exactly follow the recipe. As far as amounts of ingredients, I adjust them to suit myself, or the layering of ingredients and the way that you put them in. Alright, so I'm going to let that go for just a minute, and then I'm going to start adding the rest of my ingredients. I'm going to grab the turkey broth. I canned most of the turkey, but this is what I saved back to make soup, and then I had the one jar that didn't seal. Right, and now that I'm starting to smell the spices, which is what you're wanting, you just want to leave them in there until you can start to smell them, I'm going to start adding my other ingredients. So the recipe calls for a can of black beans, rinsed and drained. I just opened a jar and rinsed them. It also calls for a cup of hominy. I'm opened and rinsed a jar of hominy. I canned this in May. Let's see, the onions that we used were canned June 2019. And the black beans were canned in 2018. I have one jar of corn that I have drained. And this is from 2018. So we're cooking with food that's been in the pantry for a year and a half. I get a lot of questions about how long things last in the pantry. And I have open jars that were 3 years old and they were perfectly fine. Alright. So now the recipe that I'm putting below calls for a can of fire roasted tomatoes or a can of diced tomatoes and a can of green chilies. I'm using a jar of my fire roasted tomato salsa, which already has the chilies in it and it already has the lime juice in it. I'm not going to be adding any extra lime juice. So I'm going to stir that all in. And y'all, honestly, this is easy. This is a dump and go meal. If you have to cook your chicken, it'll take a little longer. If you have to debone a rotisserie chicken, it will take a little longer. You can open cans of store-bought chicken if that's what you want to use and put it in and let it go. Alright, so now I'm going to add roughly a quart of turkey broth. And this is turkey broth that I cooked down from the turkeys that I roasted. I'm going to stir that up real good. And now I'm going to add my turkey. Now this is about 3.5 cups, I think is what I had left. So I'm going to put most of this in there. Save out just a little bit to make some sandwiches with later. And then the jar of turkey that I canned, that didn't seal, I'm going to put that in there with the broth. And that's it. This is going to sit here and simmer for the next half hour or so. I will bring it all the way up to a full boil, and then I will reduce it down to a simmer and let it simmer for about half an hour, and then I'll come back and I'll taste it, see if it needs salt and pepper. I'm avoiding salt a little bit, so I don't add any salt at this point. I'll come back, see if it needs any salt and pepper. See if I need to adjust any of my spices. See if it needs more liquid, because we can add some water to it. And then I will jar it up and get it ready to can. So once it has simmered for a while, I will bring you guys back. Alright, the soup has simmered for, I actually ended up letting it simmer for pretty close to an hour. and I adjusted the spice in it. I added just a tiny bit of cayenne. I wanted it to have just a little bit more of a bite. So now we are going to jar this up and get it in the canner. Let me see if I can bring you over and give you a look at what it looks like. It turned out really good. Alright, do I have it centered back in? Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jar this up. Hot. Hopefully without making too much of a mess. Now the way I like to do my soups is I get a good scoop in each jar, so the jar is about halfway full or so of mostly solid vegetables and meat. And then I go back and I fill it with the broth. And what's left will be dinner for the next night or two. So now I'm just going to top each jar up, leaving a 1-inch headspace with the broth. And that leaves dinner for a couple of nights. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move my pot of soup and I'm going to very carefully now I have my canner heating on the front burner, but I don't can on that burner because it's right against the wall. So now that the soup is done, I've moved my canner, which is hot, onto the back burner where I normally can at. So we had hot soup, hot jars, hot canner. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take plain white vinegar and I'm going to clean the rims of my jars. First I'm going to debubble them. I got distracted moving things. And the headspace on all of them still looks good. So now I'm going to take my vinegar and my pieces of paper towel and I'm going to clean the rims on all of these. And I'm going to put my lids on. And we're pressure canning, so I don't heat my lids before I pressure can. I sometimes throw them across the kitchen, apparently. I'm going to put the rings on. Just fingertip tight. And a couple people have asked me how I determine what is fingertip tight. When the jar starts to move, I put my pinky on it and give it just a tiny bit of just my pinky's holding the jar in place. To me, that is fingertip tight and I don't really have any problems with it. Alright, so I'm going to get these in the canner and I'm going to bring it up to a full head of steam. I'm going to let it vent for 10 minutes and then I'm going to bring it up to pressure and I'm going to let them process. Now, because this is a soup, I am going to process this for 60 minutes. That's one of the reasons that I put my solids in first and then add my broth so that I know my jar is about 50% or so solids. So again, 60 minutes for soups for pints. And I will look and see what it is for quarts. I never can soup in quarts. So I'm going to get these in. I'm going to bring it up to steam. When it comes up to a full rolling head of steam, then I will vent it for 10 minutes, let it come up to pressure, and process 60 minutes. Okay, this has processed for 60 minutes, and then I shut the heat off and let it come down off of pressure naturally. And then I just set the lid ajar just a little bit to let it cool down just a little bit more. It's been about 10 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and get these out and see how they're looking. I've heard a couple of them ping. Oh, and I love it when I do broth or soup and I open my canner and there is no siphoning. There's nothing. The water is clear. That's a beautiful thing. Heard another one. Seal. That's music to a canner's ear. And I had some of this for dinner tonight and it was absolutely delicious. I served it up with some sour cream and some cheese and some avocado and some tortilla strips. And it was really, really good. Let me pull it up here and see if I can get you a good shot. It is just bubbling away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave these sitting here till tomorrow. For the next 24 hours-ish, I will let them sit here undisturbed, and then I'll come back and I'll take the rings off, I'll check the seals, I'll wash the jars, and I'll label them and put them in my pantry. And I will have turkey tortilla soup whenever I want it. Just pull it off the shelf, heat it up, and add my toppings to it. Sorry about the noise in the background. The canner is running and it's almost up to pressure, but I wanted to show you how I serve this because I'm going to have dinner. So I have crisped up some tortilla strips. Every time I buy a bag of tortillas, There's always one that gets broken, taken out of the bag, so I just cut it into little strips and flash fried it. So I like mine with just a tiny bit of sour cream. A little bit of cheese. Right now I've got cheddar Monterey Jack. I have some fresh avocado slices. I didn't do a very good job of slicing it. And then I like to top it with some tortilla strips. Then I just stir everything together. It's so good. Y'all, this turned out so good. And this is almost up to pressure, so I'm going to let it keep going. And once this is all done, I will bring you back. I really hope that you enjoyed the video today. If you did, don't forget to give me a big thumbs up. It really does help my channel out a lot. If you haven't subscribed yet, I hope that you will and that you'll stick around for a while. If you hit the notification bell, they'll let you know when I upload a new video based on your settings. Thank you so much for watching today. Have a great day.